So, we have the Bears and the Lions left. So which of those two teams do you think will be better?
I think it's not even close in my mind. It's the Lions. I think the Bears are going to have a terrible year. The Lions, people forget last year they were like 3-0-1 to start the year, and they only tied against the Cardinals because they really fell apart, and Kyler Murray finally wasn't getting pressured relentlessly by Devon Kennard during that game. Once he wasn't pressured, he was able to make some plays. But if you look at the Lions, they're relying heavily on Matthew Stafford at quarterback, but less so than they have been in recent years. Last year, we saw Jeff Driscoll and David Blau marched out as the starters when Stafford went down. This year, they have Chase Daniel on the team, and Daniel's a solid backup. He's nothing spectacular, but he can win games with a strong team around him. And I think the Lions offense qualifies as a solid overall unit. I think their receivers are good. Kenny Golladay has become one of the better young receivers in the NFL. Marvin Jones has been the epitome of consistency in recent years. I think if he played for better teams than the Bengals and the Lions over his career, people would think that he's a lot better than he actually currently is. And then Danny Amendola in the slot, that's pretty solid. I like Danny Amendola. He's reliable when he's not hurt, which has been frequently lately. So I think the weapons that Stafford has to throw to is good. I think their offensive line's in solid shape. Taylor Decker's good at left tackle, and they signed Halapoulivaati Vaitai to play right tackle. They paid him a little bit more than I thought he would get, 5 years, $50 million, but he should be an upgrade over Rick Wagner, who went to the Packers, just because he's younger and more versatile and has more upside. So I think the pass offense should be in good shape. The running game, Kerryon Johnson hasn't quite panned out yet as a second-round pick because of injuries, but they added DeAndre Swift to the mix, so now they have two solid second-rounders that should give them some depth there. Defense, I think, is a little bit more questionable, but I'll point to their massively upgraded secondary as reason for hope for the Lions. They added Jeff Okudah with the third pick. They signed Desmond Trufant as a free agent after the Falcons cut him, and then they traded for Daron Harmon to play as their starting safety. So I think those are three upgrades for them, and you pair them with Justin Coleman in the nickel spot, you've got a pretty strong secondary there. If they can find a pass rusher across from Trey Flowers, they should have at least two strong units on that defense. So I could see the Lions posting a winning record. And, if this division's as bad as we think it might be, and the teams are, team making the playoffs is 10-6 or 9-7, I think the Lions could be in the mix there, but it all depends on the health of Stafford.
Yeah, if you were to tell me that the Lions finished 11-5, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. If you were to tell me the Lions finished 3-13 this year, I'd be like, okay, that makes sense. Like, I feel like this team has the widest range of outcomes of any team in the NFL, and it's all because of Stafford's back. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Stafford, announced his retirement in August, like Andrew Luck. He has there's a pretty bad back injury. And as someone with a bad back, I could say that it never gets better. It just sucks, and it just always lingers around. Stafford could decide that it's too painful. He can't get better. He's not going to be his former self, and even if he plays, he's going to be pretty limited. So I could see Stafford struggling, even if he plays. Like, he may miss a lot of action this year. Then again, he might be healthy. Like, who knows? I don't know. Like, it was problematic at the time, but with how physical therapy has improved and medical technology has improved in recent years, he could be fully healthy for all we know. And if he's fully healthy, this Lions team has a lot of upside. You mentioned how they were 3-0-1 with that Arizona tie, the weird Arizona tie. They lost against the Chiefs after that, and they almost won that game. They really did. And then they played the Packers in that Monday night game, and they got screwed out of a win because of the officiating. So they could have really been 5-0-1 to start the year. Like, people forget that. And they finished with a bad record because they had quarterback issues and they had other issues with their injuries. But if they stay healthy and Stafford's 100%, I could see this team doing very well and getting to 10-6, 11-5. Like, some of the players they added, like Jamie Collins, Desmond Trufant, Daron Harmon, Danny Shelton, like these are all very solid players. Like, maybe even like great players in Jamie Collins' case. He struggled in Cleveland, but he's been great in the Patriots system, and the Lions run the same system. So I think he could have a great year, and I think this Lions team has a ton of upside. It just really depends, like you said, on Stafford's back.
Yeah, no, I think that's the big question on offense, and defensively, it's the linebackers for me. I think the Jamie Collins signing was great, but next to him, they have Jared Davis, who hasn't quite panned out as a first-round pick yet, and Christian Jones, who has been productive at times, but is also an undersized linebacker. I think second-round pick from 2019, Jelani Tavai, who the Patriots really liked and the Lions were able to scoop up. I think he's going to have to step up into a bigger role for the Lions to find success in that area. But if that linebacker core can turn into something solid, that defense could be a lot better than people are anticipating. So I agree with you. Huge range of outcomes here, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. And as you mentioned, Jeff Okuda, I forgot to mention him, like another solid, potentially great player. And I love DeAndre Swift. I thought he was the best running back in the draft, and getting him in the second round was a big steal. My dog's freaking out. I don't know if you can hear it, but I guess maybe he likes the Lions too. All right, so we have the Bears left, and as M.A. Davis, 50-50, mentioned they signed Jimmy Graham, one of the 20 tight ends they signed this offseason. So it'll be interesting to see what the Bears do exactly. And as you mentioned that you don't like the Bears at all this year, let us know why.
Yeah, one of the reasons is they still have 9 tight ends on their roster. So 10% of their roster is tight ends, and they may use like 3 or 4 of them during the regular season. Granted, one of them, J.P. Holtz, who the Redskins never should have waived, is a fullback, H-back, tight end hybrid player. But, they just have too many tight ends. That's not the number one reason I dislike them, but that's one of them. Their offensive line regressed badly last year, and they didn't do really anything to upgrade it. They signed Jermaine Ifedi to possibly play guard and replace Kyle Long. But I don't see that panning out too well because Ifedi was a sack machine at right tackle in Seattle. So I don't think that's going to go too well. They signed Jimmy Graham and drafted Cole Kmet. So there's 2 tight end weapons for you. But elsewhere on offense, they don't have a ton of receiving weapons. Allen Robinson is good. I think he's underrated. But, aside from him, it's Cordero Patterson and Anthony Miller, who has the occasional big game, but hasn't really produced consistently at the next level. And then that's all before we get to the quarterback mess that they have between Mitch Trubisky and Nick Foles. And I like Nick Foles. I think he's a solid quarterback, but it all depends on the system that he's in. And the Bears made the decision to trade a 4th-round pick for Foles, and that just made no sense because no team was going to trade that and take on the salary that Foles was due, yet they decided to do it. I don't think he's going to find a ton of success because he's not going to be with Frank Reich or any of the Eagles people who seem to know how to get the most out of him. It's going to be on Matt Nagy and Bill Lazor. So maybe something good could happen there, but I think he's going to be kind of below average, kind of like what he was in Jacksonville last year. If he can stay healthy, maybe he'll be a little bit better because Foles was good in the opener in Jacksonville before he broke his collarbone. But I'm not too high on him, and I'm not high on Trubisky at all. I think he's a bust at this point in my mind. I'd be shocked if he improves. And the strength, the calling card of these Bears teams in recent years has been their defense. It's not the same as it once was. They still have really strong players, Kyle Fuller and Eddie Jackson at corner and safety. Obviously, Khalil Mack as a pass rusher, and Akeem Hicks will be healthy this year too. But they have some pretty big holes. They don't have a true number 2 cornerback. They don't have a great safety to pair with Eddie Jackson. And their linebacker core, they have Roquan Smith and Danny Trevathan, but Trevathan can't stay healthy. And Smith has been solid, but I wouldn't say he's been great so far during 2 NFL seasons. So he kind of has to make a leap at this point. I just think that there are enough holes in the defense to exploit it. They don't have great depth on that side of the ball anymore. So like say Kyle Fuller goes down, their cornerback group is a complete mess and they won't be able to help it very much. So I just think that at this stage, the Bears defense is super overrated and their offense is a complete mess. So it wouldn't surprise me to see the Bears finish as one of the worst teams in the league. I think they're on their way to a top 10 draft pick, barring a massive surprise from one of the quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the holes they have in the defense. There's also a hole at slot corner. They had Bryce Callahan there a couple years ago. They never replaced him once he left for the Broncos. So heading into 2019, I thought the Bears were going to regress for two reasons. I guess one reason was primarily they lost Adrian Amos and they lost Bryce Callahan. I thought their secondary was going to be worse. Which it was. Like their defense was still very good last year. At times great, but not elite. It wasn't as elite as it was in 2018. But the reason they declined so much last year primarily was their offensive line. Charles Leno took a big step backward. Bobby Massey took an even bigger step backward. And then they lost Kyle Long to injury. Kyle Long retired. And Leno and Massey are still there. They're in their 30s now. So I don't know if we can expect them to rebound off down years. So I think they could continue to regress. If that's the case, this offensive line is going to be terrible. And, Nick Foles, he won a Super Bowl, but the Eagles had a great offensive line in front of him. Even though they were missing Jason Peters, they still had Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson, and Brandon Brooks, such a great blocking unit in front of him. Nick Foles won't have that, and he didn't have that last year. And we saw him struggle at Jacksonville. He had a pretty touchdown throw to DJ Chark in the opener. Other than that, he didn't really do anything. I just watched his two starts against I believe it's the Colts and the Titans. I watched it a few days ago. He was awful in those games. And I know he may not have been 100% coming off the collarbone injury. That's definitely possible. But he was just terrible. He just wasn't seeing the field, and he was having trouble with the protection. And I think that's going to be the case again this year. Just doesn't seem like this Bears offense is going to be very functional. Just bad all around, except for Allen Robinson. David Montgomery didn't look good at all last year. He just looked like a plotter. And maybe Cole Kmet does well, eventually, but he's only going to be a rookie. Jimmy Graham can't even walk. I don't know why they signed him. That was crazy. So it's just Bears team is going to have to win 13 to 10 games, and they'll do so against bad offensive teams. But if they have to play a good offense, their defense won't be able to limit the other team as much as it needs to for their offense to succeed. So I think this Bears team is going to win maybe 3 or 4 games this year. I think they're going to be, like you said, one of the worst teams in the NFL. Wouldn't surprise me if they have, you said top 10 pick. I think that's definitely the case. Wouldn't surprise me if they have a top 3 pick, if they're drafting second or third. It's a big fall for them. But if they get second or third pick, I think it might be a blessing in disguise because they can get Justin Fields and just rebound and maybe add to the defense and be back the following year.
Yeah, and I think this is the poster child for what happens if you select the wrong quarterback, because if they'd taken Deshaun Watson or Patrick Mahomes, we'd be having a complete different conversation about this Bears team. And granted, I know Mahomes may not develop the same as he did in Kansas City as he does in Chicago, but either of them should be better than Trubisky. And maybe if they have a competent quarterback, we're saying, hey, this team has a bad offensive line, but they're still a playoff team. So I think that's definitely something to keep in mind here. Another point I just want to make: Matt Nagy seemed to forget how to use Tariq Cohen last year, which was rather odd. Because Cohen was such a dynamic weapon out of the backfield, and they tried to get him a lot of touches, and it helped Trubisky to get him the ball, but they didn't seem to do that as much last year. They threw the ball more to guys like Jesper Horsted and all these random tight ends that they keep signing off the street. That just boggles my mind. So we'll have to see if Nagy can make some improvements to that offense, but if not, he may find his seat getting a little bit hotter, because I don't think the Bears are going to have much patience with him if this offense can't improve in some way, shape, or form. And I just want to mention one more thing on the offensive line. If it's going to get better, they may have to rely on their 2 7th-round picks that they invested in the offensive line, Arlington Hambright and Latavius Simmons, 2 of the all-named team members of the 2020 NFL draft.
That's great. We'll see if they improve things up front. I wanted to ask you a question. So you mentioned Patrick Mahomes or maybe even Watson, but let's speculate that the Bears made the right move and drafted Patrick Mahomes. Would they have won the Super Bowl in the past 2 years?
I would say yes. They probably would have 2 years ago when their defense was that strong, because they probably would still be able to afford that big deal for Khalil Mack, and they'll have more incentive to make because they have a quarterback on a rookie contract that's performing well. I mean, that's why they made it in the first place. So I would say they would have won back in, I guess that would be the 2018 Super Bowl.
Yeah, they would have played the Patriots in that Super Bowl, that boring Super Bowl instead of the Rams. So yeah, we saw Patrick Mahomes beat the Patriots in the regular season this past year. I think he would have done so in the Super Bowl. I think the Bears definitely would have won with Patrick Mahomes. Even Deshaun Watson, I think they would have won the Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson in 2018. 2019's a little dicier because their offensive line wasn't as good and their defense was pretty bad. But even still, like they went 7-9 last year, I believe, and with Patrick Mahomes, I think he's worth at least 5 wins, maybe 6 or 7 wins over Trubisky. Is it's a lot of wins. So instead of 7-9, I think they can go 12-4, 13-3, and then they take the division instead of the Packers. And they play the Niners in the NFC Championship, and we just saw Mahomes beat the Niners in the Super Bowl. So I think they could have won 2 Super Bowls with Mahomes. So it's crazy to think, instead of drafting the right quarterback, they chose the wrong one and traded up for him. So it's given that and the number of tight ends Ryan Pace has accumulated, I don't know why Ryan Pace still has a job, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to see a regime change in Chicago sooner rather than later. But those hypotheticals are always fun to dive into. Patrick Mahomes on the Bears is going to be one that's talked about for years and years and years, just because of how poor Trubisky's turned out to be as a number 2 overall pick so far.
Yeah, and Wally Joe's asking, Andy Reid gets no credit. I love Andy Reid. I mean, he develops quarterbacks like no one else. He's amazing. But I love Patrick Mahomes coming out of college. Like he had a great talent. I thought he was the number 1 quarterback in that class at the time, and I mocked him number 10 overall like months before the draft to the Bills. Then I learned the Bills didn't like him, so I dropped him. But I think it takes like for what Mahomes has done, I think it takes like great coaching plus great talent. But I think Mahomes maybe he wouldn't be like the top number 1 right now, but I think even without Andy Reid, he'd be like the number 2 or number 3 quarterback right now. Like he's elite. He's an elite talent. Like there's no question about that.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that Nagy comes from Andy Reid's coaching tree, which I know hasn't proven to be much with Trubisky, but maybe with the more naturally talented quarterback, he'd be doing better. So I definitely give Reid credit. I agreed with you at the time of the draft. Mahomes was my number 1 quarterback overall. I did have Davis Webb over Deshaun Watson, though. That did not pan out well. I was very low on Watson. We all get things wrong.
Well, no, I'll tell you this. I know a team in the NFC that had a 3rd-round grade on Deshaun Watson. So you're not alone. Like he had some haters, but that same team thought that the 49ers were going to draft Mahomes number 2. So they liked him a lot. All right, let's get to the odds in this division. So Bears are plus 500. I assume we're not going to take them. The Lions are plus 540. The Packers are plus 177, and the Vikings are plus 140. Interesting that the Vikings are the favorites. I assume that you like the Packers at plus 177 a little bit, right?
I do. I wouldn't put anything massive on this because, again, I think this is a weak division and there are cases to be made against the Packers, but I probably would put a half a unit on them, and I would consider putting maybe a half unit on the Lions as well, just because I don't think the Lions should be the longest shot in this division. I think it should be the Bears, and like we talked about, there's a possibility that the Lions could emerge as the division winner. So I'd be comfortable putting a half unit on each of them. And I don't mind the Vikings number either. It's wide open, but if I had to choose Packers or Vikings, I'm going Packers. As you can see from my Jerry Kramer helmet behind me, I do have a little bit of bias, but I'll take the Packers at that number. But honestly, every number besides the Bears doesn't sound too bad.
Yeah, I wish you could short the Bears at that number. That's crazy. Given your analysis of the Packers, I think that's a good number, like plus 177. If you're more bullish about the Packers than I am, I think you should bet that because they should be the favorites of the Vikings, given that thought process. I think the numbers are about right. I wouldn't bet. I'm not going to bet either. But the Lions at plus 540 is intriguing. That division's like pretty poor, as I said, the worst division in football right now, I think. And that Lions team is good if Stafford can stay healthy. Like I said, wouldn't surprise me if they go 11-5. So maybe I will bet the Lions plus 540. I'm going to look for a better number in Vegas. Maybe if I could find a plus 600 somewhere, I think I'd bet on that.
Yeah, I think plus 600 is like the absolutely, let's take a shot on the Lions at that number. I think that's a really good line. So if you happen to find that in Vegas, I would take that right away like that.
Yeah, and I'll let you know I'll be in Vegas in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So yeah, definitely we'll have some updates there. Looking forward to getting out of this area. I haven't really gone anywhere. All right. Anything else you want to discuss?
No, I think we've kind of hit on everything, even the Antonio Brown and possibly being interested, or the Seahawks and Ravens being interested in him. So I can't think of anything else that's going on in the NFL right now.
Yeah, there's nothing really going on. Prescott signed his franchise tender. Not a surprise at all. I don't really expect him to sign his contract, but crazier things have happened, which would include the Antonio Brown signing somewhere. I never thought in a million years that he would sign anywhere. But hey, things change, and he's a supreme talent, so I wouldn't blame a team for signing him. So we'll see. If that happens, we'll definitely have our thoughts on it next week, as well as our winners in the AFC East and NFC East. So looking forward to hearing your thoughts about the Patriots. I know we got a taste of it in the Over Under podcast. I'm curious to hear if you've changed your opinion at all on it. So looking forward to next week. So anything to plug?
Yeah, if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can hit me up at Jacob Camenker. I'm always talking football on there. I'm also talking golf picks now. I'm getting way into golf now that that's back. I almost picked a winner last week, but Walt ended up getting the winner instead. So we'll see if I can come away with a good DraftKings lineup. So keep an eye out for that. And continuing my Redskins coverage over at Rigo's Rag. Finally done watching all the players they've drafted. We'll have podcasts on James Smith-Williams, their final draft pick, and a write-up for that soon. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, that's what I got coming up.
Awesome. Yeah. So with the golf thing, I had Webb Simpson at, I think it was plus 3,000 this past weekend. So yeah, maybe I'll post some golf picks in my golf lineup for DraftKings for the tournament. I believe it's like 100. Is it like $1 million contest? I think on DraftKings. So yeah, definitely just get one lineup in there and see how it goes. Or bet on there are some good odds out there, I think. So I'll post my thoughts on that. And Anthony wanted me to read his comment. He says he has friends who are Bears fans. He said the same thing after they found that the Bears didn't draft Marino in '83. The Bears have made some dubious decisions at quarterback over the years. Maybe that'll change in the 2021 draft. There are two great ones coming out, maybe even a third. We'll see what Trey Lance does, but so yeah, so maybe the Bears will get a good quarterback one of these days. We'll see. I'm at walterfootball.com. Tons of content. We have our fantasy football rankings, updating fantasy sleepers and busts tomorrow. All of our season previews are up. Charlie has great draft content as usual, and please hit subscribe once again. That would mean a lot to us. And yeah, or send this out to someone. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.